There was an empty chair at his table, and when he announced, "My mom didn't even pay for the cake," I smiled, stood up, and walked out. My son humiliated me in front of 200 people. By sunrise, his entire future had changed. I should have known the moment I stepped into that ballroom that I did not belong there anymore. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks earlier, heavy cardstock with gold-embossed lettering that felt expensive just to hold. Ryan Carter's 35th birthday celebration. Black tie. The Riverside Grand Hotel. My son was turning 35, and apparently this required the kind of party I could only dream of hosting back when he was a boy eating birthday cake at our kitchen table. I wore the navy dress I kept for special occasions. Simple, elegant, appropriate. But the second I walked through those tall double doors, I felt every stitch marking me as different. Around me swirled gowns that cost more than my monthly mortgage. Suits tailored to perfection, jewelry that caught the light from the crystal fixtures overhead. Laughter floated through the air. Champagne glasses clinked and a live quartet played something sophisticated I couldn't name. I searched the crowd for my son's face. When I finally spotted Ryan near the bar, my heart lifted for a moment. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, his dark hair swept back the way his father used to wear his. But when our eyes met, something shifted in his expression. Not recognition, not warmth, just a flicker of acknowledgement before he turned back to his circle. I made my way through the room slowly, trying not to feel invisible. A server offered me champagne. I took it, grateful to have something to do with my hands. I found a seat at one of the round tables near the back, not assigned seating, just somewhere I could observe without being in the way. Ryan still had not come over to greet me. I told myself he was busy, that this was his night. But deep down, in that place where a mother knows what she does not want to admit, I understood the truth. My son was avoiding me. Tessa appeared at his side, her hands sliding possessively around his arm. She wore emerald green, her blonde hair styled in waves that probably required a professional. She whispered something in Ryan's ear and he laughed, pulling her closer. They looked like they belonged in a magazine. Perfect, polished, a world away from the woman sitting alone at table 17. Dinner was served. I barely tasted it. Courses came and went, each more elaborate than the last. Conversation flowed about vacation homes and stock portfolios and people I'd never heard of. I smiled politely when anyone made eye contact, but mostly I was ignored. Then came the cake. Massive. 4 tiers of dark chocolate and gold leaf, topped with sparklers that crackled and spat light. Everyone applauded as it was wheeled out. The room dimmed. Phones came up to capture the moment. Ryan, the boy I had raised alone after his father died, walked to the microphone. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. "This has been an incredible year, and I couldn't have done it without the support of some very important people." He gestured toward Tessa, who beamed. "My amazing fiancé, who makes every day better." Applause. He continued, "And of course Victor and Patricia Monroe, who have welcomed me into their family and shown me what true success looks like." Victor raised his glass from a front table, smiling like a man who had built an empire. I waited. Surely Ryan would mention me. Surely he would acknowledge the woman who had sacrificed everything so he could stand in that room. Ryan's tone shifted to something almost playful. "A lot of people have asked me about this party, how we pulled it off, where the funding came from." He paused, and I felt the air change. "I just want to be clear about something." He smiled at the crowd as if sharing a private joke. "Victor covered everything tonight. The venue, the dinner, the band, everything. My mom did not pay for any of it. She didn't even pay for the cake." The room erupted in laughter, good-natured, casual, the kind of laughter that lands when someone thinks they've made a clever quip. But it was not a joke. 200 pairs of eyes flicked toward me for the briefest instant before moving on. Embarrassed for me or amused, I could not tell which. My face burned, my throat closed, but I did not cry. I did not shout. I did not make a scene. I set down my napkin, picked up my small purse, and stood. My chair scraped slightly against the floor, unnoticed. Ryan had already moved on, raising his glass in another toast. Tessa laughed beside him, her hand on his chest. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high and my heart shattered. The cool night air hit me the second I stepped outside. I made it to my car before the tears came. I sat in the driver's seat, hands shaking, staring at the steering wheel as everything I had been holding back for months finally broke free. He had humiliated me. In that parking lot, between the tears and the silence, something shifted inside me. A clarity I had not felt in years settled over my chest like armor. I did not lose my son that night. I had already lost him long before, and that meant I was finally free to stop pretending otherwise. There was a time I didn't have money. 27 years ago I became a widow at 30 with a 3-year-old and $17 in my checking account. Robert, my husband, died in a car accident on a Tuesday morning. One moment he was kissing me goodbye at the door. The next, I was identifying his body. The life insurance policy we thought we had turned out to be expired. A missed payment in a rough month. Later never came. I remember standing in our tiny apartment in East Dallas, watching Ryan sleep in his crib, and realizing with absolute terror that everything rested on my shoulders. The rent was due in 8 days. Electricity was overdue. I had a toddler who needed food, diapers, and a future I had no idea how to provide. So I did what you do when you have no other choice. I worked. I found a job cleaning houses for cash. 5 houses on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 on Saturdays. I scrubbed toilets, mopped floors, polished furniture in homes whose owners would never remember my name. My knees ached, my hands cracked from chemicals, but I came home with money to keep us fed. Ryan stayed with Mrs. Connor next door for $20 a day. It wasn't ideal, but it was safe and she was kind. At night, after Ryan slept, I taught myself to cook. Not just basic meals, but real cooking, the kind that makes people close their eyes when they taste it. I checked out library books on French technique, Italian pasta, Southern comfort food. I watched cooking shows on our old TV and took notes. I experimented with whatever ingredients I could afford, turning cheap cuts into something tender, making vegetables sing with the right seasonings. It started as survival. If I could cook well, I could feed us for less. Then Mrs. Connor asked if I could make something for her church potluck. A neighbor asked me to cater a baby shower. Word spread slowly, the way good things do in working-class neighborhoods. Valerie Carter makes food that tastes like love. She'll work within your budget. She shows up on time and leaves your kitchen cleaner than she found it. I was 33 when I registered Carter Events as a business. It was just me in my apartment kitchen, but it had a name. Business cards printed at the library. A used catering van that broke down twice in the first year but got us where we needed to go. We moved to a small commercial kitchen I rented by the month. The jobs got bigger. Corporate luncheons, wedding receptions, retirement parties, fundraising galas. I learned contracts, negotiated prices, managed schedules that left me working 16-hour days. Ryan spent his childhood in banquet halls and hotel kitchens, helping me load and unload equipment, watching me transform empty spaces into celebrations. Sometimes he complained, teenagers do, but he learned to measure ingredients before long division, to distinguish a whisk from a spatula before riding a bike without training wheels. Some of my earliest memories of us together are in that cramped kitchen. Him asking questions while I rolled dough, him wanting to know why I worked so much. Because I'm building something for us, I would say. Something that will make sure you never have to worry the way I did. By the time Ryan was 10, Carter Events had grown beyond what one person could handle. I hired 2 part-time helpers, women like me who needed flexible hours. We kept growing, a staff of 12, a fleet of vans, a commercial kitchen large enough to handle 500-person events. The phone rang constantly. Success felt strange after years of scraping by. I bought a small house in a decent neighborhood. I traded the used van for a reliable car. I opened a retirement account for the first time. Still, old habits die hard when you've known real poverty. I lived like I was counting pennies. Outlets for clothes, thermostat low in winter, careful spending. Every dollar I didn't spend went into two places: the business and a private savings account I started the week Ryan turned 17. I called it the R fund in my head. R for Ryan, for future, for all the dreams I held for my son. The account started with $5,000 from a profitable quarter and grew steadily. 1,000 here, 3,000 there. By the month before his college graduation, it read 215,000. I imagined giving it to him someday, for a wedding, to start a business, to give him a head start I never had. Ryan changed, slowly at first, then faster. In high school he started asking why we didn't live in a bigger house. His friends had pools and game rooms. He wondered why we stayed modest when the business was doing well. Because we're building something that lasts, I told him. He didn't understand sacrifice in the way I did. He hadn't known hunger or holes in shoes. He'd grown up free from the poverty I knew, but that also left him with no reference point for what sacrifice looked like. By his senior year, he was embarrassed by my work. Not openly at first, but I felt it. The tone he used when he said I owned a catering company, the way he stopped inviting me to school events. I worked harder to prove what I'd built. Awards, magazine features, clients. Look, I wanted to say, look at what I built for you. But Ryan left for college at Texas State with tuition paid. The R fund reached $215,000 the month before graduation, and I looked at that number with joy. He came home after college and started working for Carter Events, as we had planned, and I thought everything would be different. He would see the business through adult eyes and finally understand. Instead, he met Tessa. He met her 6 months after graduation at a networking event. He came home with a light in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. "Mom, I met someone," he said. "She's incredible, smart, beautiful, ambitious. She works in marketing for her father's investment firm. Her name is Tessa Monroe." When Ryan said Victor with a kind of reverence, something tightened in my chest, but I pushed it aside. My son was in love. That should have been enough. When Tessa came to Sunday dinner, she stepped onto my porch like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Cashmere, tailored pants, heels, a bottle of wine that cost more than my dress. She said, "Mrs. Carter." I said, "Valerie." She smiled, firm handshake. Her questions at dinner were polite but carried a tone that made compliments feel like assessments. "Most caterers use pre-prepared items to save time," she observed. "It must be exhausting doing everything the old-fashioned way." The words landed like a small cut. "Old-fashioned," she said, as if that was something to be corrected. I kept my smile. The kitchen was where Carter Events began. It's the heart of everything we do. Tessa missed that nuance. Over the next months, she praised my home while suggesting renovations and complimented my business while pointing out its inefficiencies. Her father, Victor, seemed to enter the conversation like a solution to problems I didn't know I had. Victor Monroe was exactly what I expected the first time we met. Tall, silver-haired, an expensive suit, the kind of handshake meant to establish dominance. "So you're the famous Valerie," he boomed. "Ryan tells me you run a little catering operation." I answered that we'd been in business for 20 years. "Impressive longevity for a small business," he said. "What's your annual revenue, if you don't mind me asking?" I did mind, but I answered. He talked of franchising, outside capital, growth. I preferred to keep control of quality. He spoke of refinement and mentorship as if everything I'd done was a rough draft waiting for someone better to edit. The distance between Ryan and me grew. Sunday dinners slipped away. He cancelled for Tessa's brunches and Victor's networking events. He started spending time in his own office at Carter Events, taking calls I wasn't privileged to hear. When I knocked on his door to discuss a wedding menu, he waved me in with a raised finger and told Victor on the phone, "I'll send the numbers." He put me off with "handle it," and "we need to think bigger." "Playing small," he said of the business I had built. We argued more in those months than we had in his entire life. He pushed for cheaper ingredients, lower wages, corners I had never cut. It's basic economics, Mom, he said, as if caring about quality were a character flaw. Then he asked for ownership. Succession planning, he called it. I should have equity. Real ownership, he said. My hands went cold. The company was my retirement, my security. I wasn't ready to hand it to someone who wanted to change everything I'd built. When I refused, he exploded. You want me to be grateful forever? Is that it? He shouted. You want me to spend my whole life thanking you for sacrifices I never asked you to make? The words cut like a slap. I never wanted gratitude. I wanted understanding. That night I did something I'd never thought I would do. I called my attorney. I need changes to the company structure, I told him. Protective measures. David Chen restructured Carter Events, so I maintained complete control. We removed Ryan's access to certain accounts and clarified that employment did not equal ownership. I didn't tell Ryan. I slept better knowing my life's work was secure, even if it meant opening another kind of wound between us. The gap widened. He stopped coming by my house. Our conversations became professional, clipped. He had already been pulled into a world where my voice didn't carry the weight it used to. He announced his engagement on Instagram. A photo of them on a beach, Tessa's hand flashing a diamond. She said yes, the caption read. 247 likes. I waited for him to call. For the directness I deserved. A text finally came at 10 that night. Hey Mom. Just wanted to let you know I proposed. We're really happy. I'll call soon. His text felt like a courtesy more than a confession. A thumbs up emoji replied to my, congratulations, sweetheart. That was how I learned he was getting married. Patricia, Tessa's mother, took control of planning immediately. The venue, the planner, the guest list, all filtered through the Monroes. When I tried to be involved, I was politely marginalized. I was invited to dress shopping once, a ritual that felt formal, not intimate. At the engagement party at the Monroe estate, I arrived with a smile that felt like it might crack. Ryan greeted me with a quick hug. People circulated, admired floral arrangements, praised the Monroes, and spoke in the language of winter homes and yacht weeks. I tried to make small talk, and someone murmured that Ryan was lucky to be marrying into such an established family. It felt like being erased from my son's story. Between engagement and wedding, texts and calls became rarer. The R fund continued to grow. I added to it automatically, the way a mother invests hope as much as money. By February it stood at $283,000. I imagined the look on his face when I handed him that check on his wedding day. I imagined the gratitude. That fantasy died at the party. On the morning after the birthday party humiliation, clarity arrived. I sat at my desk with a cup of coffee gone cold and stared at the numbers I had saved for 2 decades. $283,412. Years of quiet deposits, from profitable events, from raises I didn't take, from money I could have spent on myself. I had been building security for my son. He'd taken it as a given. I called my attorney again. I'm rewriting my future, I told him. Meet me at 7. In a few hours, we executed permanent changes. The R fund would be redirected, beneficiary designations altered, corporate documents updated to ensure I maintained control and to limit Ryan's access to finances. I removed him as a beneficiary of the R fund and redirected that money to a scholarship for single mothers pursuing culinary careers, women who were where I had been, exhausted, hopeful, and building something from nothing. I also restructured Carter Events. Ryan's access was limited to what he needed for his role. No financial authority, no transfers, no decisive power. I named Dana, my niece who had worked at Carter Events for 6 years, who arrived early and stayed late, who cared about quality the way I did, as a partner and chief operating officer with a clear path to majority ownership. I did not tell Ryan. I sent a short email to staff announcing Dana's promotion and copied him. The responses poured in. Congratulations from staff who worked with Dana and knew her worth. Ryan's reply came 20 minutes later. Can we talk in person? He appeared in my doorway, confused and angry. What is this? Since when do you make decisions like this without talking to me? He held his phone with my email on screen. I said simply, since it's my company and I can run it how I choose. He accused me of making a mistake. I told him I was protecting what I built and giving authority to someone who valued it the way I did. He left, slamming the door. Dana came in after and said quietly, "He's angry. He'll get over it. Or he won't. Either way, this company is in good hands." Her confidence steadied me. 3 days later, calls began. Ryan called relentlessly. He discovered the R fund gone and demanded answers. "You redirected $283,000. Where?" he demanded. "That money was for me," he said, voice raw. I told him the truth. It was never guaranteed. It was my money in an account in my name. I had plans for it. Those plans had changed. He accused me of punishing him. I told him I redirected resources to people who would appreciate them. He called Victor, who had been promising opportunities contingent on that money. When the fund disappeared, Victor pulled back and the promised doors closed. Ryan panicked. Voicemails accumulated. Anger, confusion, panic, desperation. Finally a plea, "I'm sorry." But nowhere in those 76 missed calls did he acknowledge what he had done to me. It was all about what he had lost, not about what he'd done to deserve consequences. I chose not to answer. I let the calls go to voicemail. He left message after message, each one trying to coerce me back into making amends for him. Dana held the line at the office and told him I was unavailable. Tessa texted demanding resolution on their timeline. "This is between Ryan and me," I replied. "When he's ready to talk without his parents orchestrating it, he knows where to find me." Patricia called my sister in attempts to fix it. My sister tried to persuade me to relent. I didn't. I had reached the end of enduring being treated as expendable. 2 weeks after the calls began, Ryan asked to meet for coffee. He picked the shop on Elm Street, a place with memories of Saturday mornings and homework talk. I arrived early, nervous but steady. Ryan walked in looking worn and lost. He ordered coffee and sat down. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You're my son. I'll always come when you ask," I answered. He apologized first, for the party, for the joke that cut me in front of everyone. Then he told me everything else had fallen apart. Victor had withdrawn promised support, his relationship with Tessa had frayed, and suddenly the world he'd been building on borrowed faith had shown cracks. "I took you for granted," he confessed. "I let other people influence how I saw you." His voice cracked. I had done my share of crying. Now I listened to his regret. He said he wasn't asking me to restore the fund. "I know that money is gone, and honestly it should be," he said. He asked if I could forgive him. I told him I forgave him long ago. Mothers do that, but forgiveness didn't mean everything went back to where it was. Trust needed rebuilding, and boundaries would stand. He accepted Dana's role. He had to. She had earned it. He told me he wanted to start something of his own, a consulting business for restaurants, and asked if I would help with advice. I agreed, on one condition. He had to do the work himself. I would guide him, not rescue him. That conversation was a beginning, not a return to the past. A week later he called to say he had talked to Tessa and they were postponing the wedding to figure out what they truly wanted. 6 months later, life had shifted in ways that surprised me. Dana ran Carter events splendidly. The business grew under her leadership. 2 new corporate clients, expanded seasonal menus, more staff who understood and respected the standards I'd fought to preserve. For the first time in 2 decades, Carter events didn't need me the way it used to. That felt like freedom instead of failure. Ryan found a small success in consulting, modest at first, but his to build. He landed a client and the pride in his voice made me swell with a different sort of joy, the kind that comes from watching someone learn the hard lessons and still show up. The wedding with Tessa never happened. They tried for a while but wanted different things. Victor moved on to other prospects as he always did. I visited the culinary school where my scholarship was active and met the first recipients. Single mothers juggling jobs and classes, determined to change their children's futures. "Mrs. Carter, we can't thank you enough," one of them said, tears in her eyes. "This means I can finish school." I told them only one thing: pay it forward one day. Watching them walk back into class, I felt the R Fund find its true purpose. I also began reclaiming Sundays. No longer working, no longer chasing deadlines. I took quiet mornings for myself. Farmers markets and books and small-town drives became part of a life I had forgotten how to enjoy. On a Sunday in September, Ryan came over for pot roast, the meal that had comforted him as a boy. We ate and talked like people who had been honest and survived it. He helped with dishes the way he used to. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly, meaning the fund, Dana, the choices. "No," I said, "because it forced both of us to be honest." He hugged me before he left, not perfunctory, but genuine. We did not return to what we were. We had something new, built on honesty. It wasn't easy. Rebuilding trust never is. But he was trying. That was enough. Some nights I still thought about the woman I had been, the one who believed sacrifice without recognition was noble. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who knew dignity matters. Boundaries aren't walls. They are foundations. Saying no to being diminished is not cruelty. It is self-respect. People outside the story often summarize it simply: a mother humiliated by her son, dramatic retaliation, family fractured. The real story is quieter and stronger. A woman who finally understood that her love for her child didn't require destroying the love she owed herself. I redirected my legacy to people who would honor it, set boundaries to protect my peace, and learned that loving a child and protecting your dignity are not mutually exclusive. I gave my son everything I had for years: time, energy, money, dreams. When he proved that everything wasn't enough, I finally did what I should have done sooner. I gave myself permission to stop. To redirect my resources to people who would honor them. To love my son without destroying myself in the process. That was my revenge, if you want to call it that. Not spectacle or vindictiveness, but a quiet, firm decision to value myself as much as I had always valued him. If you see yourself in my story, if you've been giving and giving to someone who only knows how to take, let me tell you what I learned. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even when that someone is your own child. Love them, forgive them, support them when you can, but never let them convince you that your dignity is negotiable. The moment you stand up for yourself and draw that line, something shifts. Maybe they learn. Maybe they don't. But you learn that you are worth protecting, worth defending, worth honoring. And that lesson is worth more than any amount of money or inheritance or legacy. I still love my son. That will never change. But for the first time in my life, I love myself more. And that makes all the difference.